I know that we want to try to make content for the Love Go channel interesting, but again, as I think I've stated before, one person's junk is another person's treasure. So, although this may not be as interesting to you, it was interesting to me. Uh, Basically, what occurred was I'm in a study group that's doing kind of a topical study, and each section is typically some idea or word, and like prayer, worship, sin, grace, trust, love, justice, and so on. So I was asked to lead a segment, and that particular segment was on love. And as I worked on that segment, it just struck me that the whole idea of each of these themes was really dependent on the understanding of the word that was being studied. So looking at love as a particular word, what do we mean when we say it, or when it's been translated, in this case from Scripture, from other languages? And language is, in my opinion, a very imprecise means of communications. We tend to, in fact, judge others by our own standards. So if we're a person who tends to be truthful, we assume other people are truthful. It may not be the case. If we are a person who tends to tell lies, we assume everyone is lying. So some of the things that we hear, even though they're communicated in a language, they are affected by the hearer and the filter of the hearer. So it's very, very difficult to be precise in communications using words. Those feelings or that we have may not, in fact, easily come out in language, and may even more difficult for the person that's hearing that language to really understand what it is that we're saying. So in the section we were looking at the scripture from Matthew 22:36, where he says, "Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses?" And Jesus replies, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally as important. Love your neighbor as yourself." So my short version of that, as it is in the name of this channel, Love Go, love God and love others. But how do we understand that? And in the English language, I think it's pretty confusing, I would say. The word love, it gets used in a lot of different circumstances. If we look at the dictionary definitions, and this is not exhaustive but exemplary, but I picked 5. One is, love is meaning that you have an intense feeling of deep affection. Another understanding of the word is that you have an attraction based on a sexual desire, kind of what our culture typically throws the word around and using is that where maybe one is thinking of using someone else for their own personal gratification, which to me would be not love, but nonetheless we use that word to describe it. Another one is an affection based on an admiration or a benevolence or common interests. Another meaning might be it's the object of attachment, devotion, or admiration. Another one might be is an unselfish, loyal, and benevolent concern for the good of another. So when we use the word in English, my goodness, there's quite a number of things that we might mean when we're saying it. So in English, it's, I love my wife, I love my children, I love my parents, I love my friends, I love my dog, I love my car, I love my job. Obviously, the feeling that we're trying to communicate with language in these cases are not identical things. Hopefully, I love my wife and I love my dog are communicating differences. I love my car. I love my job. Is certainly not a relationship that we have with friends or children and so on. So the use of the word in the English language even is more imprecise than it might be in other languages. If we take a look at the Greek, this is often covered in Christian studies, is that much of the New Testament was written in Greek, and when we read it in English, it's translated to love all the time, and it can be different words. But agape is probably the love of God, the unconditional affection for His people, and if we love in an unconditional, affectionate way, then we are displaying love as defined by agape. Phileo is an affection for friends. Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. It's love for a brother, affection for a brother or sister. Eros, maybe the physical love, lust, sex that we would understand in our culture today. But also Plato had it to be an appreciation of beauty, an affection for beauty. So maybe this is, I love my car because it's just so beautiful. I have an affection for it. I want to give my car a name. Is maybe an eros. Storge is, the love parents and children have in a family relationship of affection. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, but philata is love of self. So maybe a little bit of the narcissistic feelings that you would have for yourself. Xenia is institutional hospitality, a relationship that's rooted in generosity or giving to others. So we see in the Greek, and this again is not an exhaustive list. I think there was a number of other words that are specific to a meaning more defined than English's love being in general use. Just happened, I think it was this week, I'm doing a morning study of Today in the Word, and we're doing a Hosea, and there was a passage, Hosea 2:19, is God speaking to Israel, as I will make you my wife forever, showing you righteousness and justice and unfailing love and compassion. And this is written in Hebrew, and Hesed is the word that's used. And actually, that's not an affection, an emotional feeling. The meaning of that word is it's a dedicated, ongoing care, a covenant devotion, a loyalty. So again, the English rendering of the word love might not reflect the original meaning. So in doing this work, how does the Bible define love? And if you look at John 14:15, Jesus says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. The obedience to Him, the obedience to the commandments is the love. Now, we can have affections, and they can be intense, but I find, at least for myself, that you don't always maintain that emotional status. It's not possible as a human being to do so. I can love God emotionally and affectionately in certain times if I'm out in the creation and I see the beauty of everything that he's making, I can be overwhelmed with affection for the grandeur of his majesty and his power. If I'm in a worship service, I find singing can be a place where you emote quite easily compared to other times. I was in a choir group for a number of years and had to be told more than once by the choir director that emoting might be a fine interaction with God, but when done in a group that's trying to sing together, it can be disruptive. So certain times that affection, is that mental state, is that emotion, is that caring, but what about times when it's not? And in my feeling or my understanding, there's intention. And again, this is a mental state. This is a commitment to carrying out actions. And in the case of God, and as Jesus has indicated here, is it's obeying him. An intention, a intended pursuit of obeying what he has commanded you to do. And I don't believe that what he's saying here is that's an evidence that you have these affections for me. I think that in fact this intentioned pursuit of carrying out and being obedient is in itself a love, indication of love. Now, how about towards others? So we can have that emotion or we can have that intention towards God, but and we can certainly have the emotion, intention towards those in our circles that we care about, our family, our friends. But in Matthew 5:43, Jesus says, "You have heard that the law of Moses says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you." Now that gets real hard. You're driving down the highway and someone cuts you off and then flips you the bird. Affection is probably not going to be how you feel. But I do find that, in fact, the idea of intention, a mental state or commitment to carrying out actions that do good for others, even at our own personal cost, is possible. I can stop and say, Lord, be with this fellow because he needs you, and bless him with your peace that passes all understanding. I know that that's probably a menial type of example. There's a lot of harm that's done by a lot of people that are so serious and hard, but I do think the principle is the same, that we're not probably going to come to a point of emotional affection, but we can come to a point of intention to do good, even in fact at our own personal cost. We can put aside our pride and in fact put on humility towards these other people. So that was the kind of description of what do we mean by love, and my musings. And as I've stated before, I'm no philosopher, I'm no theologian, I'm no apologist. So these are the simple musings of a simple man that sincerely wants to, in fact, do God's will. And I find, for me personally, that although loving enemies is difficult, in fact, it's possible when, in fact, what we're talking about as love is my intention to, in fact, do good for them, whether it's by prayer or whether it's by other types of action, irregardless of what, in fact, has gone on, or irregardless even of what my emotion is as far as affection. So I hope that might be of interest to you to know how someone else is trying to work through these issues. I'm sure that there's a lot of people who have much more understanding and deeper understanding and than I, but hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, whether you you liked it, and if you would subscribe, certainly those are doing good for others. So thank you.